Yeah, my name is Lee Philip McGinnis. I am a PhD in marketing, and I also have my PGA of America membership. And I will tell you a little bit about my journey before we get going, just to basically help you understand why I got to this topic and why I'm so passionate about it. First of all, I was born and raised in Twin Falls, Idaho. These are not actually the Twin Falls, but it's in Twin Falls. That's the Shoshone Falls. Did you know that the Shoshone Falls is actually 50 feet higher than Niagara Falls? It's called the Niagara of the West. Okay, yeah, seriously. And I started my education at the College of Southern Idaho, JC in Twin Falls, and I thought I was going to be a pharmacist, but I realized after organic chemistry that I could never handle a career in that. And I did talk my two best friends, though, into becoming pharmacists, and they still are pharmacists today. And I hide when I see them because I know they're extremely happy. No, they are. Then I finished my degrees at Idaho State University in Pocatello, Idaho, in mass communications and marketing. I had two different majors. I worked in the advertising and the resort industries. In fact, right after I graduated, I worked for a resort casino called Cactus Pizza in Jackpot, Nevada. And it was right on the Idaho and Nevada border. I got to work in the marketing department, and I had a ball because when entertainers would come around, they would set me off to go golfing with the entertainers. And there was a golf course on property that I basically owned because nobody would really golf there a whole lot. It was a great course, but I found out early on that I wasn't going to be a professional gambler because when I was working there, I tried to do my share of gambling in the evenings, and that didn't work out too well. So I changed course, literally and figuratively, to the golf course. And I got pretty good at it. And I became good friends with the pros there. And I thought, boy, you guys have a pretty nice gig. You know, working at a golf course all the time, what could go wrong? And so I played and played, got my handicap down. Then I went to graduate school. I went to Kansas State University, and I got a master's degree in mass communications with an advertising emphasis. But it was during that time I got this wild idea. I knew I was going to become a professor someday. And I thought to myself, Lee, why don't you try to get your PGA card? You know, so you can give golf lessons during the summertime because professors don't work in the summer. So I needed to do something, right? I see some professors here saying, no way, you're completely wrong. It's the case. We work a ton. We do a lot of our research in the summertime. But I started out and I contacted some different golf courses in Boise because I was going to go back there for the summertime. I finally did get a position, but it was later on. And I got a position in Sun Valley, Idaho. And it's a resort area. And so I'll tell you the rest of this here in just a second, but that's where I really kind of hit my stride. But before then, I'll get back to that story. Before then, like I said, I was born and raised in Twin Falls, Idaho. Not a rich town. It really had a couple things that it was known for, and I use this reference, and the students don't understand what I'm talking about anymore, but that's where Evel Knievel attempted to jump the Snake River Canyon, okay, and he failed miserably. He went straight up and then straight down, and broke a few more bones. He was known to have broken every bone in his body, but that really kind of ended his career. And Twin Falls is a very conservative community with a big Mormon population as well, and he brought in, a lot of motorcycle gangs and things like that, and people were scared because his jump wasn't until September. But all summer long, you had people, graffiti all over the place, kind of raising hell. His son, Robbie Knievel, wanted to jump the canyon a few years later, and they said, absolutely not. No way are you ever going to do that. And Twin Falls is also known for Mark Felt. Does that name ring a bell to anybody? He was the deep throat guy in the Watergate case. He's the one that was kind of the whistleblower. But now, what it's really known for is having the largest single Greek yogurt plant in the world. Chobani moved another plant out there in Twin Falls, Idaho, so that's something that we take great pride in. In any event, I learned to play at Twin Falls Municipal Golf Course. So when I hear that golf is a rich person's sport, I say, what, are you kidding me? I would save up my allowance and pay $2.25 to play at this golf course. That was a hefty amount back in the day. And I would ride my bike there and play the course. Later, when I became richer, I paid $50 for a junior membership, and that would last me the whole season. But this was anything but a rich person's course. But I just loved to play out there. My friends did as well. I would ride my bike, which looked low like this, a Schwinn, and I was quite proud of that bike. With the banana seat, I packed my clubs on my shoulder and off I went. And a lot of you are shaking your heads, you probably had a bike like that as well. So this was the 17th hole at Twin Falls Municipal Golf Course. And it looks like a fairly benign hole, right? Par 3. I think it played upwards to about 190 yards. Oftentimes, though, we would hit our golf balls off into a canyon over here. And that would be about a 3-hour diversion. Because not only would we look for golf balls down in the canyon, but there was a cave that ran all the way through underneath the golf course that ran for about 500 yards. And it had water in it, and you'd get into complete darkness. And so my friends and I would kind of hit that diversion and then finish our round a few hours later. And that happened all the time. We just enjoyed the heck out of it. It was a great adventure. Okay, so eventually I moved up. This was down the street from me, about 1.5 miles from where my parents raised me and where they gave me birth. Not at the house, but at the hospital. And this is Canyon Springs Golf Course, down in the canyon, about 500 feet down. Canyon Springs Golf Course open to the public, and that's Blue Lakes Golf Course, private. And I dreamt one day that I was going to play Blue Lakes Country Club. And I finally did get an opportunity. I was dating a young woman, and her father, a lawyer, they said, hey, do you want to play? And I said, heck yes, I want to play. So we got out there, and I was having a fantastic round. You know, I was 1 over after 8 days, and I was just having a glorious day. She was having a great day as well. Then there was a mud puddle right in the middle of the fairway, and I noticed it at the last second. So I swerved to miss it. Remember how Pete Rose used to slide? Head first. She went into it head first, and I thought, oh my gosh, what did I do to this person? I was scared, I was frantic. I turned around to see how she was doing, and she was covered in mud. And I said, oh my gosh, are you okay? She goes, I'm fine, but you're taking me home right now. I said, really? I'm 1 over. You know, I never played here before. Can't we just wash off? And she didn't want anything to do with that. That relationship didn't go on too much longer. But I finally got to go over to that. And here's some other pictures of it. This is the Prime Bridge. People will actually base jump off of this bridge year-round without needing a permit. And you know, you can take your bungee cord, you can take your parachute, do whatever you want. You're going down 500 feet. They do that year-round, and they attract quite an audience to do that. Has anybody ever been to Twin Falls? You will see that. If you cross this bridge, you'll see people walking with their parachutes and all, and jumping off the bridge constantly. You know, so that's quite interesting. Here's another picture of Blue Lakes Country Club. I don't know why they call it Blue Lakes. But in any event, if you go to this lake right here, you can see 30 feet down, crystal clear. We used to go fishing for crawdads in there, or crayfish, whatever you want to call them. And, you know, little shrimp-like things. And we used to have a ball doing that. And here's where I ended up eventually. You know, I ended up at Warm Springs Golf Course in Sun Valley, Idaho, as my first position in the golf industry. Family friends said, hey, if you want to take over as pro, you can. I worked in the industry, I had a desk job, and that just didn't suit me. I said, I got to go ahead and do this. And so I ended up being a non-member head pro in Sun Valley, Idaho. Did that for 2 seasons, and then of course you get the snow coming in October, and that would put the end of that. Did that for 2 seasons, and I said, it's time for me to move on. But before that, I just wanted to kind of throw some more pictures out there. Sun Valley, Idaho was the first destination ski resort in the country. No, I'm not doing a promo for Sun Valley or Idaho. But it was often attended by the Kennedys. You know, here's a picture of Jacqueline Kennedy, but the Kennedys have long gone there. That's where Ernest Hemingway ended his life back in 1961 at the age of 61. So he had a big presence there as well. Arnold Schwarzenegger has a big presence there. In fact, he was the first one, they say, that was driving around in a Humvee as a citizen. You know, that was a military-issued vehicle, but he was the first one as a citizen to actually ride around in a Humvee. He asked the owners of my golf course, their golf course, hey, would you be willing, he was on a sleigh ride in the middle of the winter there, he goes, would you be willing to sell this property to us? And the owner said, yeah, for $40 million, because it was 40 acres. He mentioned, well, it looks like I'm going to have to film a few more movies before that ever happened. So he never ended up doing that, but you can still see that he's around there. So what happened is I passed the player's ability test. To get into the PGA, you have to pass the player's ability test. And at that time, it was 15 strokes above the rating. And so I was on the PAT mini tour there for a while. My game wasn't anywhere where it needed to be in order to pass, but I kept on practicing and working at it. I passed the PAT in Santa Rosa, California. Santa Rosa Golf and Country Club. The target score was 75-75. I shot 74-74, and I said, I'm out of here. I'm off that mini tour. So I decided not to go back to Idaho. Instead, I wanted to go what was considered the mecca of golf, at least on the west coast, and that being the Monterey Bay Peninsula. And you have courses such as Pebble Beach, you have Cypress Point, you have Spyglass, a lot of the major golf courses. And I wanted to see how the industry really worked, you know. So I began working there. And my first place was at Rancho Cañada in Carmel, California. And a lovely place. You can see this is Pebble Beach right here. This is Carmel by the sea. Fantastic beach. I once lost my keys there. I had the keys to my apartment, my truck, and to the clubhouse, Rancho Cañada, really nice course that had 2 different facilities, 2 different golf courses. I lost my keys. I was about ready to give up, and as I walked out, I saw the little red thing that I had on my little red flashlight on my keys. Thank God, I'm still thinking. But that's what happened, and we used to play football on this beach and just have a great old time. Very pretty area. And here's a picture of Pebble Beach itself, and this was about 3 miles away from where the golf course was. This is the famous 7th hole that you see. That's Jack Nicklaus's favorite hole in golf, the 7th hole at Pebble Beach. So on to the University of Nebraska I went. I finished out my PGA while I was at the University of Nebraska because you have to do, I think it was 36 credits. You earn a credit for each month that you work in the industry, so I earned all my credits. But you have to be actually employed by a golf course to get your card, to be elected into the PGA. And so I finished out at a golf course in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I started working in sports marketing. I was going to do all my research on underdogs, you know, because I've always been a fan of the Cubs. Nebraska used to be known for their football, believe it or not. Back in the 90s, they were just coming off the 3 national championships. They co-shared the championship with Michigan in 1998. Now they're equally known as a volleyball school, women's volleyball. In fact, last year, about this time, they set a record for the largest attendance ever at a women's sporting event. At 93,000, they filled up the football stadium and created that record. And here is Charlie Baker talking about it, and talking about the importance of women's volleyball. You're going to really see that take off over the next few years. I ran into Jim Gentry while at Nebraska. He ended up being my dissertation chair, and he kind of turned my whole thinking around. He goes, well, Lee, you're constantly talking about golf. Well, what else is there to talk about? And sports in general, of course, but I always talk about golf. He goes, why don't you stick with your passion? Instead of worrying about underdogs, you can do that later. Why don't you do something in the golf industry? I said, by golly, I think that's a great idea. And I started looking at the research, and I looked at it and said, my gosh, you know, women or men outnumber women by 5 to 1 in golf. And I never knew that. I said, really? Because I always grew up and women played a lot of golf, whether it was at the resorts that I worked at or whatever, but women were always quite present. I said, they only make up 20% of the golfer participation and less than 20% when it comes to the actual playing time, the rounds played. I said, that's just not right. And, you know, and so I went from underdogs to women in golf. And this is Julia McQuillan, and she was one of my professors at the University of Nebraska. She got all her degrees, including her PhD from UConn just down the road here. And she turned me on to gender studies in golf. Not in golf, but I applied it to golf. And we had a lot of great arguments in class, and I really did not understand that there was a power differential, you know, and I said, what? You know, women have, you know, just as many rights as men. Why is there such an uproar about it? Because we read a lot of feminist literature, and then I got to understand everything. It's like, wow, that was truly eye-opening to me. So I did apply it to golf at that time. And so she really turned me on to that. But there's this issue with the turning effect. This was, when I started all this research, it was about 25 years ago. And I read up about the turning effect in golf, and that women make up almost half of all beginner golfers, but then they turn around and leave shortly thereafter, you know, in great numbers. And I thought, why is that? So when I was looking at the literature, it explained a lot of different things to me. Then I started conducting qualitative research. I was talking with women who played the game of golf, but had to persist under all these different constraints. And they were telling me, well, there's a lot of behaviors out there that you wouldn't even think about. I said, well, tell me about it. Well, first of all, you know, when you walk inside a golf course, you know, men are most likely to be addressed than women are. I said, are you kidding me? Oh yeah, that's just one of the factors. There's more pressure too on women to perform on the golf course, you know, because they feel like, since, you know, being a marginalized audience, more pressure is on them to perform. I said, man, I never realized that. They said too that the pressure starts as soon as they roll into the parking lot, because they can envision themselves and what they're going to have to encounter on the golf course. And I said, I just did not know that one bit. And so I started to uncover a lot of information, a lot of things by doing my qualitative research. Then I also found out that at the PGA of America level, which has about 30,000 members across the country, these aren't players that you see on tour. These are people that work in the industry, you know, your golf pros, your teaching pros, and the like. And it was there that I discovered too that only 5% of women are in the PGA of America. My gosh, you know, and then there's the LPGA that has a small number as well. I said, there's absolutely no representation when it comes to women at the golf courses. What's wrong here? And so then I looked at the power discrepancies that exist. I looked at some of the other behavior on course where this is common, at the time at least, you know, for men who were golfing behind women to cross their arms or give some kind of indication that, hey, you're taking too much time, you're being too slow. Very unwelcoming things. Started looking into it more deeply about how they were marketed to on the golf course. A lot of the merchandise was in the back, you know, so that doesn't send a very welcoming signal from a marketing standpoint. And the clubhouse facilities weren't equal in terms of what they would offer men and women. So I thought, yeah, some things have to change here. So I looked at that a little bit more deeply. And then what happened, this turned into my dissertation topic. I sent out a survey to all the GIN members, and the GIN is the Golf Handicap Index from the USGA. I sent that out to all the members of the Nebraska Golf Association, a survey. I sent it out in the middle of the winter time when there's nothing else going on in Nebraska. And I had 170 questions on there. Imagine that. I sent it out by mail, and the incentive that I offered, somebody gave me 2 tickets, I think it was, to a Husker game in the fall. And I got, this may not sound like much, but for a lot of us who do survey research, I got a 40% response rate. I was jumping up and down. And that was out without a reminder or anything else. But you got to figure, I sent it out in the middle of the winter, nothing else to do. And they sent it back in great numbers. I had my data set, and this was to 2,000 people. So my wife had to help me, you know, put everything into the envelopes and the stamps. I think the stamps were only 25 cents at the time. But it was a laborious process, but I got all that back. And I worked off that data for quite some time. So I had both qualitative and quantitative data that I looked at. And so my dissertation was called Analyzing the Gender Gap in Golf Using Ritual Dramaturgy and the Gender Perspective. It sounds like a mouthful, it is. This is early SEO, search engine optimization. You want to kind of hit on all cylinders so that when people look for your paper, you're going to get hit, right? And so we published quite a few articles in there, and I had James Gentry as my dissertation chair, Julian McQuillan, and a couple other folks that helped me out with it as well. And so here are some of the publications that we looked at. One of the things that we did is we termed golf as being a ritual, and dramaturgy. Dramaturgy is the deal that you have actors on a stage. Life plays itself out in that particular fashion. I use a lot of sociological work in that area, and discovered that when we broke it down by the different components, such as props, you know, that's something that you have on the stage. We looked at gendered equipment and how women felt about gendered equipment, if that led to any kind of a breakdown in terms of participation. We also looked at, you know, the clubhouse facilities as being the stage. We also look at such things as the teeing grounds on a golf course. We actually named one of our first papers Getting Past the Red Tees, because a lot of people understand what that means. You know, the red tees used to be associated with ladies' tees, you know, the term ladies' tees from the industry. Now the industry has been encouraging golf courses to get rid of that nomenclature, get rid of that meaning. In fact, get rid of the red tees if you can, because you know that sends that same signal. It's a ritual that's embedded into the system that creates that notion that women should always sit up closer to the hole. And my wife gets upset when she will walk into a golf course and the starter will say, ma'am, the red tees are over there. Well, why do you assume that I need to hit from the red tees? And I get mad with her. I said, no, they shouldn't make that assumption at all. They're probably trying to be nice, but it still reinforces that ideology. So we looked at that. I did some qualitative research with Julian McQuillan here. Julian and I published 3 papers together, along with Connie Chappell. And then my dissertation chair and I wrote Getting Past the Red Tees, which was all qualitative data, looking at all the different constraints that exist for women on the golf course. Then the ritualized behavior, that is also some more data that explored that to see why there was that gender divide. And so here are some other ones too. These are, you know, Journal of Service Research, good publications in the marketing area. So we kept on exploring and exploring. And our central findings basically is that, you know, there's still a lot of the ladies' tees going on, that way of phrasing it. Women have a harder time finding playing partners, especially when they're young and they're trying to find other girls with whom to play. You know, it's very, very difficult. You know, boys don't have that issue, the young girls typically do. And there's also the gender roles in the household, you know, where women are still the primary caregiver when it comes to children and the like, and so that prevents them from really getting out there and playing golf for 4 or 5 hours. You know, so all these are basically constraints that exist. There are fewer events for women and for young girls as well, and less marketing attention. You know, marketing needs to do a better job of really welcoming women in, but they say that, no, we are just reinforcing the breakdown in society. You know, if you have 80% of male golfers and 20% female golfers, we're trying to reinforce that. And not reinforce it, but we're just playing off of what those segments give us. We've always argued against that, you know, trying to make it open up a little bit more. There's more. So, you know, we broke down our constraints as interpersonal, and structural. Intrapersonal is within the person. We discovered, too, through our research that women lack the self-confidence that men have when it comes to playing golf because there's so much pressure on them. Okay, that's one area. Interpersonally, that's the behaviors that they're seeing from other golfers and other workers out on the golf course, that they don't feel welcome. And structurally, as I mentioned before, you know, a lot of the marketing and the term ladies is something I discovered too early on in my research as a term that sociologists feel like you're running your fingers down the chalkboard, because it's a term that kind of reinforces the notion that you have to perform like a traditional lady, but the golf industry still uses that term. The Ladies Professional Golf Association, as an example, still uses that term, which has that same impact. So there are a lot of constraints that exist out there. For a long time, there are several golf courses that didn't allow women. It wasn't up until about 20 years ago or so that Augusta finally allowed women into it, and Condoleezza Rice was one of the first female members there. And so that kind of opened up the industry a little bit. All that research combined led me and my colleagues, Lauren Heineman, who used to be here up until last year, she's now down at Hofstra, and Ben Marcus to do a case study, looking at all these different results, because we figured that the best way to try to change minds and to try to change the industry norms and to get more women involved in golf and to create more diversity is to start bringing it in at the classroom level. And this is one of the ways that you can actually do that, is to try to get the students to work on these case studies. And this is something I've instituted over the last few semesters. And here's a picture of Lauren, and there's Ben right there. Many of you probably know Professor Marcus, right? I don't know if any of you know who Professor Heineman is. Anybody have her? Okay. So the purpose of the case study was to try to basically look at why golf has realized this recent boom, and it has. Golf has grown considerably over the last 5 years, due primarily to COVID, because golf was one of the few sports that you could actually participate during COVID where you were naturally distant from people, right? And one of the few activities where you could enjoy outdoors. So the golf industry, which was on its downward trail, hit a huge boom. It's like, wow, this is fantastic. Because it was very difficult to get millennials to participate in the game. Now it's growing by leaps and bounds. It's very difficult. I see a lot of golfers here. It's very difficult now to get a tee time during the weekends. Have you struggled with that? It's very difficult because they're all filling up pretty quickly. And you know, in the early or the late 90s to the early 2000s, the golf course industry overbuilt because people like Tiger Woods made it so popular, so interesting that it overbuilt. And so over the last 2 decades, golf course closures were outpacing golf course openings. So now there are fewer opportunities to go out there and play golf, and the golf industry has long been under fire for, oh, you're taking up too much space and the chemicals that are used and that sort of thing. So we wanted to explore that. We also wanted to figure out how can we actually grow the game among women, get more women into the golf industry. So in the case study, we used what's called the Make Golf Your Thing. It's a coalition among the PGA of America, the United States Golf Association, the LPGA, and a few other golf organizations that have come together to try to figure out how to grow the game. So we use them as basically the focal point and the source that the students will have to reference in order to kind of answer some of these different questions. And we also used, I shouldn't say used, but we also invited Sarah Stone to participate in our study. She's the director of golf at Chevy Chase Country Club down in Maryland. And she has done an extraordinary job in her career of building up the women's population. She focuses on women in golf, but she gives lessons to everybody, but she's just simply outstanding. We were grateful that she participated in the study. And here's a picture of her right here. She has a very, very impressive resume. And so these are the discussion questions that we came up with. You know, we have both marketing and management issues that are being the focal point here. Lauren came from management and Ben from operations, but we figured it was a good way to kind of make this everybody's case study that you can break down using your classrooms. So we tried to figure out how to promote women's golf and girls' golf participation. We looked at DEI-based initiatives, diversity, equity, and inclusion, to try to figure out how to make golf more welcoming and invite more people. And so we also look at improving the diversity of women golfers and employees out on the golf course. And we also wanted to figure out how to increase the gender diversity of golfers and golf professionals. These are not independent problems, because if you can build a basis of more girls and young women into the game, then you're going to be able to grow from there and you're going to invite more people into the industry. One of the problems that the industry has right now in terms of PGA professionals is that it sounds like a glamorous job, but really when you start out in the industry, you're going to get paid very low wages, you know, sometimes minimum wage, and then you're going to work long hours. You have to wait a while in many cases to actually be able to give lessons where your revenue can really jump up, your income can jump up. And so it's not as glamorous as it may appear. It's really a lot of hard work, and it takes a while to move up. Because the way that you move up is you have the assistant professional or the head professional move on to other positions, and hopefully you can move up at that time, but it takes a long while to do that in many cases. So it's not quite as glamorous if you get a job up in the northern states and you find yourself down in Florida and other warm spots in the wintertime, so you can continue on. So we're looking at that. But some of the common ideas that have emerged from that is we figured that we have to incentivize women to get into the game at the professional level. We have to show them that there can be good wages that happen after the fact or a long time, but we need to incentivize more women to get into the game and look at that as being a proper way to establish your career. We need to create more access to golf. One of the things that has really occurred is, in terms of technology, is that we have TrackMen. You've all probably have heard about the TrackMen. You see those on TV all the time that track your golf ball. But what a TrackMan will also do is help you figure out the different data to improve your golf swings. And so you have, over at Pine Oaks, they have 4 different bays that are set up for that. It's expensive equipment. It costs about $30,000 just to get started in on the TrackMan. But it's fantastic technology. Give you the club head speed, the ball speed, the smash factor, and all these different things that can hopefully improve your game. But we need to create more access for that. Maybe at the high school level, try to get your high school teams to be able to adopt this type of technology to improve much faster. We also need to figure out how to convert off-field, off-course participation into on-course participation. You've all probably have seen Top Golf over here, but research has indicated that those people aren't moving over to the green grass places. It's a way to hang out with your friends for a couple of hours, spend a lot of money, enjoy some drinks and some food. But it hasn't really translated into the golf course participation, so we're still trying to figure out how that can occur. Have private business subsidized fees. We figured that, big corporations, I know Titleist FootJoy does a lot, company just down the road from us here, does a lot to support the industry, and they give out a lot of scholarships at the PGA level. But we need more businesses to buy into that and help subsidize the green fees, because playing on a weekend, you're not going to spend less than $50. Am I right there? I mean, if you go to a quality course, you're not going to spend less than $50, and oftentimes it's $100. That's not too feasible. It's not too feasible. That price has just gone up over the last 5 years due to the demand that has been present on golf courses. Continue with women-only leagues and clinics, and send more marketing signals that golf is welcoming to everybody. Again, I grew up with the notion that I didn't know at first that golf was a rich person's sport. Because I was pedaling my bike down to the Muni. I didn't grow up thinking that, women were left outside of the in-group when it came to golf. I had no idea. And that's why it intrigued me so much when I actually started researching it. So that's been our quest. We went to the PGA of America this last May, and I wanted to propose this case study to them so that they could use it in the classroom. And the PGA has what's called professional golf management programs, which are 17 universities across the country that actually have programs where you can earn your Class A membership, but they also have what's called an associate's program, which is essentially what I went through at the time. It was called the Golf Professional Training Program, GPTP. It really made the education really much more accessible. Here's the headquarters. They just recently relocated from Port St. Lucie, Florida to Frisco, Texas. I brought my son with me. He's in the PGM program down in coastal Carolina, and he dresses up nice, and I figured he could give the PGM perspective when we actually made our presentation. We met with Sandy Cross. She's been in the golf industry. She's worked for the PGA of America for almost 30 years now. She's done a tremendous job, and she was fairly recently named the Chief People Officer. So that's who we were talking with. We were also talking with the senior person in education and another individual that was involved in education there as well. And when we presented the case study, they said this is all fine and good, but some of the statistics need to be updated a little bit. But we all know in academia that when you get something published, it takes a year or two. And by the very nature of that, it's going to become outdated. And then she said, but we have the most diverse field that you can imagine working at the PGA of America. And you don't have to be a golfer. And she was talking about other people that made them so diverse. She's in charge of all DEI initiatives. And so then I presented to her the golf business course that we're running. I said, hey, this thing filled up, on the first day that it was open, and we even had a waiting list. And I said, all you have to do is put golf out there to people, and they'll jump on it. And well, we've already had some other programs that are doing that, so I kind of walked out of there thinking, gee whiz, I kind of struck out there right in front of my son. And so that got me to thinking. She did mention, we are very diverse, we're leading the way. Then ding, 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 thought about, let's write a positive case study as the PGA of America being an exemplar in the field. So that's what we're going to work on next and approach it from that fashion and see if we can't make some more headway there. And she did mention that, well, usually you start off at the sectional level, then you move your ideas upward that fashion. And I said, I don't have the patience for that. And so we did start at the very top, and we got shut down a little bit, but there's still hope. If you look at the golf industry, things are looking up. They are looking up. If you look at the percentage of women who now participate, it's gone up tremendously to about 7 million. And men has grown too, you know, the male participation to 19.6 million. But women participation has grown by 25%. So that's extremely promising. Things are looking up there. And more recently, we had our first PGA of America female president in Susie Whaley. While she was working down in Connecticut, she moved her way up through the sectional areas, the regional areas, to become the first female president. And she did a great job. She really opened up the doors to women in golf and more diversity. She's down in Florida. And this is me with my former student. She may look familiar to some of you. This is Bailey Grant, who's going to be a guest speaker in my 2 courses this next week. And she works for the LPGA Tour. And she's in charge of gaining all the volunteers for different events. And the golf team thankfully jumped right on board with that when I sent her invitation out to them last spring. They all jumped on board and said, yes, we'll help out. And so, was that a fun experience? Yeah, and a lot of them got to keep score, right? The electronic scoring, which my wife did as well. And it was very nerve-wracking because you really had to focus in on things. You had to pinpoint or ping where people were on the golf course. And those statistics fed up the ESPN and the LPGA Tour site. So very, very nerve-wracking. You got to meet a lot of really good golfers. I think the biggest crowd out there was following Lexi Thompson and Megan King, who's from the Brockton area. Huge crowds there. It was fun. And this is my wife here, who loves volunteering at these events. She's volunteered at everything that you can imagine. Not everything, but she used to always volunteer at the FedEx Championship over here, the USGA. I went and volunteered with her over at Brookline Country Club. And we were in the merchandising tent. And she was just having the greatest time ever. And I said, I can't stand this. It brought me back to my McDonald's days back in the 80s. I mean, people were just buying everything, tossing the things into the cart and not thinking anything of it. Price was not even thought about. Once in a lifetime deal, throw it in there, throw it in there, throw it in there. It was something else. Does anybody know who this is? I told you this is my wife. Does anybody know who this is? Local legend on the LPGA Tour. Her nephew is quite a golfer as well. Any hints? Any guesses? Pat Bradley. You know, she was a legend back in the day. Keegan Bradley's aunt. And look her up, Google her. She was tremendous. And I wanted to give out a shout out to the women's golf team for not only being such great volunteers, but for having an excellent tournament this last week at Blue Hills. And they're a young team, but they're moving up. And so very proud. I'm the TFL for the team, so I had to give them a shout out too. But thanks for being here. I wish I could give you all extra credit, but I can only give that to my students who would have been here without me. And I also do a little bit of golf fan behavior research because I'm fascinated with the galleries and that kind of motion. A few years ago, back during when COVID hadn't really hit its stride yet, we went to the Waste Management Phoenix Open. And if you know anything about it, it's the greatest party on grass, I think they call it. And it is a party. I mean, they get close to 800,000 people there over the weekend, over the 4 days. They have a stampede out to the 16th hole where everybody, if you hit a good shot or a bad shot, people in the audience will throw out cups. And if you have a hole in one, they'll throw out cups and drench people. It's just a big party, music playing. And if you have the chance to go and see it, it is like no other tournament. It's the complete opposite from the Masters, you know, which is nice and quiet and serene. And so they're my kids, and my daughter Bridget, my wife Elizabeth. And I stole this picture from John, who put it on LinkedIn. And John joined us a few weeks ago. I see all my students here from the Golf and Business course here. A few weeks ago, John joined us out on the quad, and we were having one of our lessons for the day. Golf tournament. It wasn't a golf tournament, we were just hitting balls at each other. And foam golf balls. And we were just having a ball. John got in the mix as well. And it's been a joy, and we're going to hopefully continue on with that and keep on introducing students to some of the issues that reside in the golf industry, as well as gain more participation in the industry. So that was then. All right, that concludes my presentation. For some questions if you have. Yes.
On one of the slides, you mentioned women and diversity in terms of that you're studying. How is that looking too in terms of other areas of growth?
It is increasing. I think that there hasn't been a lot of movement in terms of the industry seeing more diversity. I mean, except at the PGA level, at the headquarters, but it is growing. It is growing. The breakdown is promising, and I think once we start making it more accessible and get golf courses where everybody can play them, I think it's going to increase. But that's the trouble, is actually finding land available to build new golf courses and that sort of thing. Anything else? Yes.
Do you see golf continuing to grow at like a constant rate, or do you think it'll plateau anytime soon? Because you said when Tiger came out, golf boomed up, and then slowly before COVID, it went back down again.
Right.
Do you think it's going to stay on the upward rise?
I do. I think it's hit critical mass, and I think that people start playing it enough to get hooked to it. Golf. One of the things that we looked at is flow and communitas in our different studies. Flow is psychological flow, where you lose track of self-awareness. It's very addictive. So if you're enjoying something very, very deeply, you lose track of it. But that's a very addictive state. When you're out on the golf course, you're focusing in on golf. It takes up all your concentration. It's very relaxing. And communitas is a group felt psychological flow, where you enjoy relationships with other people at an extremely high level. Sometimes we only get glimpses of it, but it's very addictive as well. And I think we've reached that point where people have picked it up and they're addicted to it now. It's a good addiction, because you're out there, if you play 18 holes, you're walking 5 miles. In my case, probably 7 miles, because I don't hit them straight. And so it's very good exercise. I mean, you can burn off 1,500 calories, so it has that going for it as well. So I think it's going to continue to grow. I think the millennials have picked it up. Now Gen Z is starting to pick it up. And you're just going to see it continue to grow. I think the industry, though, is being very hesitant to start building again, just because of what they had witnessed before. So we'll see how that coincides with it, but eventually they're going to have to build more golf courses to fill out the demand. Good question. Yes?
I've heard like a lot of professionals in the industry, specifically PGA, have kind of like lost their love for the game after turning it into work. I was wondering if you yourself experienced anything like that, or...
Another good question. Yes, I did. Once I passed the player's ability test, I threw my clubs away. Not literally, but I put them away. And you'll find out too, when you work in the industry, as I did for those years, you don't play golf anymore. Unless you're fortunate enough to work at a club where you get to golf with the members. I didn't have that. And the last place that you really wanted to be after a long day working at the golf course is at the golf course. And so, yeah, I did find that. Fortunately, though, I kind of, once I put that aside, I started playing a lot of golf with my colleagues, the other assistant pros, and we played every course on the Monterey Peninsula. I got to play Pebble Beach 6 different times, I think it was, because we had that reciprocal arrangement. Even got to play Cypress Point, which was good. Really tough course to get on. But I think that, a lot of people get that burnout. Once you merge your joy for something with work, it does become a burnout a little bit. So that's a very good question. Anything else? Yes.
More of a comment. It's funny, I come from the corporate world, and I think some of the gender disparity starts there. A lot of business deals and discussions happen on the golf course. People take afternoons off to go play, discuss, and women are very rarely included. I will never forget, and it never dawned on me till hearing you talk. Years ago, there was a corporate retreat with vendors, and they sent all of us, the business team, down. And they sent us an email that all the men had golf time scheduled, and all the ladies had been, I shouldn't say ladies, all the women had been scheduled at the spa. And it wasn't even a question. Now, forgive me, I'm not a golfer, so I was happy to go to the spa. But now it dawns on me that it was never even a question. All the vendors and all the men went and played golf, and we all went to the spa.
Wow, that's interesting. That's that's one of the goals. When John and I first discussed, this golf course class, golf and business. It's not just golf, as you all realize. It's business as well. We're talking about the industry. But one of the things that we talked about was that very fact, is that we want to make sure that people understand the importance of golf in business relationships. And it's something that you can do really well. You all are going to have a major. All of you business majors? No. Okay. Well, you still have time to switch. But
Or get a grad degree.
yeah, or get a grad degree. Yes. Okay. But yeah, that's that's going to help throughout your career. If you know how to play the game of golf, you're going to be invited to scrambles, and different kinds of tournaments, and you're going to have that luxury to, take clients out on a golf course. And there's not too many places that you can find. There are not too many places you can find where you have that person, a captive audience for 5 hours. And I've always been taught too, the last thing that you want to do when you're out there on the golf course with a potential client is talk golf. Isn't that ironic? Because it will naturally emerge. You don't force the issue. Let the other person talk about it if they want to. But you're out there to try to establish a relationship with the other person, get to know them. Golf reveals a lot of character. If you're the one who likes to cheat and use the foot wedge, then you're going to look at that and say, boy, is that the way the person is going to be, in our business? Do we really want to deal with this person? So there's, it reveals a lot of good character. And like the little guy at the very beginning said, golf is one of those rare sports where you'll call a penalty on yourself. And it's just that way. I mean, you feel like you sinned against nature if you did something wrong and didn't let other people know about it. That's just the nature of the sport. So I love it that much. Elizabeth?
I was going to, following Kristen's comment, just reinforce a couple of things you said. I have 3 kids, as you know, and 2 boys and 1 girl. They all started golfing when they were like 3 years old. And my daughter has sort of given it up, partly because she's never had anyone to golf with. None of her friends golf. She could golf with her brothers, but her brothers golf with their friends, and they're all very close in age. And one kind of interesting example that didn't really occur to me until you talked about this was that my daughter tried out for the high school golf team last year, and when she went, it's a co-ed team, she had to try out with all the boys at the same time. And when she showed up, she was one of 2 girls. She was extremely nervous, and she had a really bad first day. They had her over 2 days. The second day, she did a better job, but she missed the cutoff score because she was so nervous the first day golfing with all the boys. So she didn't make the team. But she played an excellent, they played 9 holes both days. The next day, she really played like she knows how to play, but she didn't make the team. So it's interesting. I never really put it in the context of she was golfing sort of outside of what she typically, what she's used to, and she was really nervous with all the
extra
boys.
pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, golf is 90% mental, and the other half is physical.
Yeah.
True. But any other questions? That's a great point. Yeah.
I grew up hearing stories. One of the reasons of the marginalization of women in golf was a lot of clubs would give them the less desirable tee times as a matter of policy. Is that ancient history at this point? Or
I think so. When I grew up, there was the ladies' day out on the golf course, but that was usually on Monday or whatever. And I think that has gone by the wayside. It's been in my own observations, I think that has gone by the wayside, and which is a good thing. Just like the ladies' tees should be in our rear view window as well. John, did you have a question?
No, it's just playing.
Okay. Any other? Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, on the behalf of the golf team too, we really appreciate this because I guarantee you every single one of us probably have some type of story, that something has happened to us in a golf course. When I was a little girl playing golf, there was probably no girls golf tournaments, and now we go, there's probably 100 women that play in the mass women's amateur. Before, we would have to play with probably the boys, all of us had to play with the boys. They wouldn't want to play with us, and it was just always a mess. And now it's grown so much.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate you doing this and
thank
showing that it's growing and putting effort into this. And
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, and I'm sure you all have your good stories. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anything else? I've been up since about 3:30 this morning. I got to thinking about, I have a presentation today, so I had to really scramble. But, with no pun intended, but that would have been a good one. Right? So that's all I really have to say.
On behalf of everyone, thank you very much.
Yeah, this research, again, started out as a passion project for me because I've always loved golf. And like I said, it came as a surprise to me that the numbers were so much more in favor of men. And I said, well, why is that? You know, and so, I guess over my research and over my different courses that I took at the University of Nebraska, it became much clearer to me. You know, I talked about the ritual dramaturgical framework and how we were able to basically deconstruct participation in the different components of golf to realize that was what was really creating that gender divide.